Morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the October 25th public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rich Simmons, Chair of the Commission. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: the site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff presents staff reports. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly for the record. If you are here to speak for or against the project, because your time will be limited to 3 minutes. Take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based upon the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given today at this hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And we'll start with the introduction of the commissioners, starting on my left.
Good morning, I'm Jose Gelat.
Good morning, I'm Liz Welch.
Good morning, I'm Tom Hammer. Good morning, Jose Perez.
And from city staff, we have Dennis Fernandez, Alexis Guzman, and from legal, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel.
Good morning, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda? Additionally, will the commissioners please state whether or not they've had ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are on the agenda? Thank you.
Mr. Fernandez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Somehow we lost our announcements on our agenda, so I'll just jump in and enter the administrative approvals into the record. I'll provide those to the clerk. And I did want to, although we were talking about it before the meeting, I did want to remind you that we do have a public hearing scheduled in November on the 22nd. We're expecting to have pretty full agenda that week, so we'll probably be reaching out to you to poll you a little earlier than normal to make sure, because it is close to the holiday. We apologize that that's sort of just how the calendar laid out this year. So we'll be contacting you shortly just to determine your availability on that. Okay. With that, we're ready to administer the swear-in.
We're gonna go back and do the minutes from the August 23rd.
Oh,
Somehow
we lost the minutes too.
Deleted from the agenda too. So in our packet, we have the meeting minutes from the August 23rd meeting. So everyone had a chance to review, and we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of said motion to approve the August 23rd minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any vote against? No. Motion carries by unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll move on to the swearing now. So anyone in the audience who's going to be presenting or giving testimony, please stand and raise your right hand for the administering of the swearing.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you'll be giving today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. May be seated.
And with that, we are ready for our first case. First case is BLC 22-152 for the property located at 2903 North 10th Street. The request is new construction of a single-family residence and site improvements. I'll give a short photo essay. On your screen, you see the vicinity map for the Ybor City Historic District. The subject property is located north of I-4, just off of 19th Avenue on 10th Street. See the 1929 Sanborn map, which indicates the subject property. The building has been demolished since then, and so the site is vacant. Just for proximity, this is 10th Street, this is 19th Avenue. This is an aerial of the neighborhood. Once again, the subject property faces west. Here's a photograph of the lot in its current condition. This is the property abutting to the north. One thing we look for is the elevation from grade, so that gives you a good reference for what that is. And the same on the south. This is a corner, 10th and 19th. Looking back down 10th Street to the north, and then in the opposite direction to the south, tees in to 19th, and there's a house at the end of the vista. And then directly across the street is another vacant parcel. So with that, I'll have the applicant come up and present their request to you.
Good morning. I am Sierra Hero. I am the owner and the builder. I am a builder in Tampa, but this is my personal residence. As we talked about, this residence is in northwest part of Barrio Latino. It is a 50-foot by 110-foot infill lot. Because of the setbacks, the intention is to put a 40-foot wide, 44-foot deep, two-story single-family home on this. As the introduction talked about, one of the big connection points was to ensure that we had similar setbacks and front porches consistent with the streetscape, that it demonstrated elevated design similar to the streetscape, and we referenced the local architecture. I'll walk you up the street photographically, and we can talk about some of the historic reference points we used in the design, and then we'll go through the cutout. So we talked about this is just north of 4 on 10th and 19th. You know, one of the challenges that we try to address is, you know, the lack of parking and conventional historic neighborhoods, and there's some existing single-family homes with portico shares that we pulled on to reference the design. But if we walk up the street, this is that corner house we talked about on the south east corner that directly abuts the lot in question. That's my lot. And then as we walk up, you can see there's a diversity of architectural styles, some historic, some non-historic, but not a lot of consistency. But we did want to pull through some of the more significant historic architecture reference points on this street. So as we come back around the opposite side of the block, so this is walking from south to north across the street on 10th, and you can see there's quite a few non-historic slab-on grades, attached parking. A lot of the considerations were to try to build a new house that had architectural references to historic, but also leveraged livability and security and off-street parking. So this one house is one of the homes there. If you walked from the house, of the 6 nearest houses, 3 of the 6 have attached portico shares, which is unique in the neighborhood. but also was very informative of the way we wanted to design. So we wanted to pull on those reference points to create some off-street parking, not have attached massing in the garage, and to really leverage those nearby attached porticos. So you can see right across the street, there's two abutting houses. Both of those have porticos, and then on the west side of the road, there is the same architecture. So that definitely informed how we wanted to use this lot. It's a rather narrow lot with 5-foot setbacks. It's YC8 zoning. To the south of the property, the house is elevated visually 12 inches. To the north of the property, the house is elevated 18 inches. So in the design, we wanted to give a relief to show 18-inch elevation. I didn't want to actually design this, especially given kind of what we've seen with durability and wind and moisture impact. I did not want to design this with a crawl space. So we're elevating the slab 18 inches and doing a trim detail around the bottom that has an 18-inch relief. And then the front porch is traditionally elevated floor joists, but the main house is built on a slab, and it is CMU units to carry that weight. But it is elevated. The top of the slab is 1.5 feet above existing grade, and then trimmed and detailed to show that elevation to create that consistency, but to create the durability and the weather resistance of a slab on grade CMU unit construction. And then historically, this is how the house sits on, or the proposed house sits on that slab, 5-foot setbacks from the back. Once again, the top of slab is elevated 1.5 feet above existing grade, and we averaged the 4-foot setback to the south and 8-foot setback to the north to set back the front porch 6 feet from the property line. We went 333 Ribbon Drive, and then this house is a 2-story side gable with the intention is a standing metal seam roof. This is the floor plan. The first floor to the south is the portico. To the center is the living room and the kitchen with a central stairway. To the north is a single bedroom lock and leave attached apartment. My mom lives with me, and that's the intention is to have that hers. And the second floor is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with 2 abutting living space top story. You can see in the side cutouts at CMU construction, conventional windows through the CMUs, standard floor attachments. The front porch, I was here in August and we talked about some of the construction details, so this reflects a lot of the comments I got from the commissioners. The most we could get on the front porch on the slope was a 212. The roof line is a 412, but once we get above 212, we get into the second-story windows. So it shows a 212 roof, finished the same way as the main roof of the house and the abutting gables. Architectural.
Excuse you for 1 second.
Absolutely.
All the images that you're running through right now are very washed out on our monitors, and we can kind of see them up there, but not very well. So I'd say take a little bit of extra time and run through all your presentation on your elevations and your site plan.
Okay.
A little bit more time. Yeah, if you could zoom in on images, that'd be helpful too.
I can. Let me get out of the presentation and actually just do exactly that. So let me see if I can do this without moving those pictures around.
You've got the one on the right.
I did not print handouts for this. I did upload everything, and I can pull specific drawings if we need to.
Zoom in, I think that would probably help. It just gets very washed out.
Yeah, so that is no problem. So let's go through. I already kind of messed this up, but let me. So this is I'll go through those construction details again. This is the first floor. So this would be the southern entrance. How do I? I don't know why I did that. Let me see if it's thinking this is a second screen and I have to do this. I do. Okay. Now they're going to test my technical skills. Okay. Let's go through these four architectural drawings one at a time, then up close. I not let it do that? Get back down. Okay, so the first floor architecture, so this is 40-foot wide with 5-foot setbacks on either side, conventional CMU walls, once again slab on grade with the extended porch being elevated 18 inches off of grade with conventional crawl space floor truss design. The center of the house is the main living area, so living, dining, a central staircase to the second floor, kitchen in the back. To the north, to the left of the front door as you come in, is a lock and leave single bedroom apartment with the intention, for, as I spoke, for having it as a mother-in-law suite. And then to the right, to the south side of the property, is the porte-cochere. That is an open space connected in the front and the back to the front and the backyard, similar to the architecture drawings we talked about earlier. Let's see if it's going to let me show you. So the second floor, you've got the central staircase that takes you to the second floor. On either side of the staircase are bathrooms and a hallway to north and south living rooms, and then 4 bedrooms around each edge over the porte-cochere and over the apartment with closets to the center, which you'll see when we fenestrate. The cutaway of the main construction plan. This is not. So this is a structural insulated panel roof over CMU wall construction, ledgered out floor plan, ledgered out second floor trusses, conventional single hung vinyl windows, and then slab on grade foundation with the porch extending typical framed construction. Let me scroll down and show you that. And so the porch is attached to the foundation, shows a 212 roof. It'll have a standing metal seam with the corners finished the same as the gables on the front, and then posts that are architecturally designed, and I'll show you that in 2 slides, with just reliefed panels similar to the front doors and the rest of the architectural details. Does anybody have any questions? I know that we normally don't ask questions, but I want to make sure before I zoomed out that you guys saw those floor plans. And then I'll stay zoomed in so we can go through the line drawings so they're a little bit more clear for you. The front of the house, once again, 2-story, 40-foot wide, SIP roof construction, standing metal seam. It's reliefed 2 feet on either side, one showing the porte-cochere set back 2 feet from the face of the house. A conventional porch that is extended 6 feet off the front of the house. And then I show the same symmetrical relief on the north side of the house that houses the single-family apartment and the 2 bedrooms above that. On the rear of the house, it's showing the windows over the kitchen in the back on the first floor, windows for the single-family apartment, and then symmetrical fenestrations off the living and the bedrooms. And then you can see the porte-cochere penetrating through from the front to the back of the house. And then on the side to the north, you'll see the entrance to the single-family apartment, the fenestrations for the bedrooms and the closets above, and then that 212 extended porch on the front of the house, sitting on trusses, and double 212 roof, allowing that 2-foot setbacks off of the main house to create some aesthetic balance. Let me see if I can make this zoom back out, and we'll talk about fit and finish. There we go. So the material palette, it's 5-inch horizontal lap with 5-inch corner board, 5-inch picture framed windows, a standard Craftsman style panel relief front door, and then color palette is white trim, white Craftsman relief panel pillars, white doors, white standing metal seam roof, and then gray 5-inch horizontal lap construction. Once that's all applied to an elevation, you can kind of see the elevation renderings. gray horizontal board battens, lapped white porch, standing metal seam roof at a 212, conventional roof at a 412. One of the comments was that these corner boards and trim pieces were originally 3 inches, so we expanded that. We increased the pitch of the roof to just underneath the roofs to achieve that 412. And then we did break up what was commented on, that the walls were very monolithic. And so we did an architectural detail, broke that, and added a different material. We're doing a whiteboard and batten above the horizontal 5-inch lap siding at the gable ends to break up those walls. And then, obviously the north share is fenestrated for both doors and windows for the single-family apartment, bedrooms above, and then on the south, there's a door that penetrates through, and the intent, because that's very monolithic, because it's a porte-cochere wall, it needs to be structurally solid to carry that second wall, but the intent is to vegetate that side yard to create a much more aesthetic, appealing streetscape from the side. That's the proposal for 19th and 10th.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez?
Morning, Commissioners. In reviewing the application, the staff does consider the application to be consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with a few notable areas. In going through the presentation, we did want to revisit the elevation from grade and show exactly how that was calculated on the north and south properties that abut. Seems that those numbers should be able to be pointed out visually to ensure that it is consistent along the street. If you could indicate the location of the mechanical systems and any fencing on the site, that would be helpful. Any walkways, he did talk about the ribbon drive, but if he could review the walkway, that would be helpful as well. Those usually connect from the front of the property, the sidewalk to the front porch. If he could talk about his historic reference a little bit more for the details of his porte-cochere. It is, most porte-cocheres are open on 3 sides, so this is a little bit different approach on it. Could talk about that a little bit more. During the last public hearing, there was discussion on additional fenestration on both the left and right elevations. I believe he's done some work on that, if he could review that again. I want to really walk through the wall section on the new construction. He is proposing some type of metal insulated siding that's been provided in his presentation. I don't know if he has a sample or a cut sheet on that, because that would be a material that we haven't seen before, and we would want to make sure that that is referenced in the district. And then any of his appurtenant fixtures, such as the door hardware, the color palette, those need to be reviewed as well. So if we could just spend a little more time on those, I think we could get to where you would have the information that you need to make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Anyone here from the public wishing to comment on the case, please identify yourself. Seeing none, we can begin asking questions of the applicant, starting with Mr. Perez, on my right.
Sure. Good morning. Can you go back to the site plan?
Of course. Now, if it will listen to me. Sorry, there's a lag in the computer for some reason.
I have that printed out if you want.
Got it right there. You can indeed. Thank you. That is gonna be easier. How do you flip over the table?
You just hit duck team.
Oh, much better, yeah. So my question is, once you go through the porte cochere, what's happening in the back? What is that dimension on the?
That's just the back of the portico share to the back of the lot. That's about 44 feet from the back of the,
Is it just patio, parking,
no, it's vegetated. It's gonna be landscaped.
vegetated?
Yeah, I was trying to avoid detached parking because I wanted to actually have some garden back there.
Okay. And what's the width of the porte cochere?
22 feet wide, 40 feet deep.
All right, thanks.
I'm glad you left that up because I have questions about the porte cochere.
Okay?
You said the building the floor slab is up 18 inches?
It is.
And I noticed in one of the drawings, there was no steps between the porte cochere and the floor slab. So how are you dealing with that 18 inches of grade change, both from the street side and then on the
Yeah,
back side?
there's 3 6-inch steps. So there's a 6-inch step from the slab of the portico share into the interior of the house. There's a 6-inch step from the grade of the front porch interior house, and then there's an independent step. So there's a step up to that and a step up to the porch on the front of the porch. So it's the elevation changes happened from the front of the house in 3 steps. From the portico share, because it's coming up in grade, from the slab of grade, there's a 6-inch step into the house.
So the driveway is sloped?
It does. It slopes up. It's the driveway slopes up. The ribbon driveway slopes up a foot to meet the front edge of the portico share.
But, okay, and then what happens at the back?
It'll drop 18 inches. So I don't even think about putting steps back there. So I can put a step off the portico share in the landscaping plan.
Or a wall?
Right.
In looking at the elevations,
Sure.
it looks like you don't need to go there, there's practically no overhang, which is inconsistent with the district. They typically have a 2 or 3 foot overhang.
Yeah, it's designed to have a foot, so all those overhangs are a foot, both on the gable side and on the front, and a lot of that honestly is just, thinking about what we've seen with wind impact with the end. I'm trying not to create a kite out in the wind. If you want that extended, we can certainly hang that over a little bit, but the intent obviously is structural.
Yeah, as Dennis said earlier, the closed-in portico share is inconsistent with others in Ybor City. They're typically
Yeah,
open.
I elevated that a bunch of different ways with different pillars and different supporting structures, and it always looked like a house on stilts because it's so deep that we ended up with, one, obviously the CMU massing supports that second floor very well, and 2, every other elevation I did really just looked like, one of the beach houses on stilts, and it just didn't look appropriate for the community.
The renderings show the building is being painted black.
Great. So it's white batten. So if you look at the elevations and the color palettes again, that is kind of a dove gray siding with white trim.
The dark color to me is just.
It's actually, it's not even a charcoal. It's dove. It's a pretty medium gray. I'd agree. That'd be a pretty black and white
Yeah,
contrast.
that's not what your renderings show, though. It looks like it's black, which I find to be inconsistent with the color palette in Ybor City. The other thing that I didn't see is any scale massing to what the buildings adjacent to it look like, and what the relative height is to the building to its adjacency. So I'd like to see that.
So we can definitely look at, I did not do an elevation that depicted the north and south properties, but we can definitely juxtapose streetscape that when I walk you up and down the street.
And I know there's other two-story buildings, but most of the pictures that you showed indicated everything is single-story, so I'd like to see how that massing is with.
Yeah, I mean, so right across the street, there's this two-story building right here.
Okay.
And then you've got some higher peaked roofs adjacent. There's quite a bit of two-story in the marketplace. You can, I can walk you through that street again a little bit slower if that would be beneficial. But the overall height of the house is consistent within that neighborhood, given the amount of two-story and the higher pitched roofs across 10th Street. Let me see if it'll walk you through that street again.
That's all I had.
So that's the house those were the two houses directly, but you can see you've got a lot of kind of 12-12s on that street, which significantly elevate the top of ridge in a lot of these houses. This is a dense file, so it's trunking too much information. So it's one of the reasons we kept that roof at a 412 is to create similarity in the massing. But it is a very heterogeneous street. If you look, there's a lot of different architectural styles, different roof peaks, different front porch elevations. And so I think, there is not a monotone elevation to that street and that community, but there is plenty of high peaks in 2 stories, as depicted right there and right there. That I believe, while there is inconsistent massing on this street, I think that a 2-story house, given the several 2-story houses on the street and the high pitched roofs, sits in that community very, very well.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about the portico, I'm just saying. But I do have a couple questions in regards to your apartment, the single room apartment.
Yep.
Where is that going to park? What's parking for that? How does that, because I understand right now it's your mother.
Right.
And someday it might be someone different.
Right.
How is parking going to work for that?
So there's currently 3 parking on property, and then everybody else it's street parking, right? So the house accommodates 3 parking, 2 under the portico and 1 in the drive.
Okay. And then on the apartment, I didn't see any cover. Were you planning on covering that door with a covering? The entrance from the side of it's the side of the house, correct?
It is entered on the side of the house.
So there's an entrance from the side of the house. Were you looking at doing any covering over that?
I wasn't, just because there's a 5-foot setback there, and I'm already crowding those setbacks with the house, and there's a 1-foot overhang over the top. I could certainly put a comparable shed roof over the top of that door, but it wasn't thought of in that initial design.
Okay, so right now there's no covering over the front door other than what the normal overhangs on the roof come off.
Correct. The front door has the full 6-foot front porch. The side
sorry,
entrance for that
I'm talking
apartment
about the
is
apartment.
is the exact same as the side entrance for the outside passage across the portico. Those are just tucked in under the 2nd-story eaves.
Okay. And then the other, okay, that was that one. Those were the 2 main things that I wanted to ask about. Oh, talk about your ribbon drive. I do have a note here about this.
Yeah, it was a direct request from staff to reduce concrete and reflect consistency. So it's a 333 ribbon drive per staff request. There is an existing apron from the house that burnt down on that site. We're going to probably extend it because it was shifted to the far south side.
Right.
We'll extend it, drop it into a 3 ribbon drive, bring it to the front slab of the portico.
Okay, and then are your 2, you have your 2 ribbons, are they concrete? Is
They are
that what-
concrete. They'll be poured
Okay,
concrete.
and then what's going to be in the middle of them?
Grass.
Okay. That was all I have. Thanks.
No questions, thank you.
Will there be any fencing on the site?
So there's existing fencing on both sides of the property. There's an existing link fence on the front that the intended is to remove that, to put side gates connecting to the neighbor fences on either side, both of them just in front of, thank you. Do I push to show that one again? So, there's the central to both the side of the apartment and the porte cochere, there's a door. So the intent is to put the fence in front of the door to create privacy and security, and connect it to the existing fences that run the full property line on both sides.
And then sticking with the site plan here, is there any other paving? Is there going to be some sort of path from either the porte cochere or from the front porch to the side apartment to the north there?
So there was none intended. So there is a step and there will be a poured sidewalk connecting to the existing sidewalk. The 333 Ribbon Drive is directly abut the porch, but there'll be it'll be railed on the outside, so you'd go around through the front anyway, because you'd enter through the porte cochere through the side door. So the only besides the ribbon driveway would be the concrete sidewalk to the step to the front porch in the front.
Okay. And then, let's see. So then with the porte cochere, so we have the lap siding on the side. You said you had sort of like your pier detail with the CMU, how it meets grade, right?
Yeah, so the lap siding comes down to 18 inches, and then there's a hardy board that's just a white contrasting colored hardy board that covers the bottom 18 inches of the house, so it shows an elevation.
And then will that turn to be on the inside of the porte cochere anyway for the exposed walls, and when someone walks past, what do we see?
So it'll wrap the front corner, and then the interior of the porte cochere is going to be smooth hardy board. So it's going to look like a smooth, flat interior finish that'll be painted white.
Okay. And then, so for the patio, what's sort of the ceiling or the soffit condition underneath there?
Recessed can lights and flat hardy.
Okay, are there going to be any sort of like lights in the front elevation or anything like that? Any
Only
sconces or anything?
underneath the porch, so you don't see.
Okay,
So
and same thing with the porte cochere, any just
Correct.
recessed lighting there as well?
Correct.
All right. Let's see. And then for I think I saw on your elevations, there was one AC unit on the north
Yep.
elevation?
Yep.
I'm assuming you're going to at least have two, if not three, because will you have a separate one for the apartment?
No.
Just one?
The
Okay.
entire house, because it's the windows and the insulation that are intended, so I built zero energy home, so it's a really energy efficient home, so it loads out at 2.5 tons.
Oh, wow, fantastic. And then, so for that insulated panel, do you have like either a cut sheet or some sort of?
Yeah, I can certainly send a link or provide a cut sheet, so it's a readily available, it's a 5-inch lap wood grain, EPS insulated steel siding, so it looks just like a 5-inch lap hardy or anything else because it's wood grain and painted, but the interior of it's insulated, which creates that thermal break from the outside to the CMU.
And finally, just to make sure, there's no garage door, right? That was on the application?
Correct,
Just the garage
it's
door,
porch,
that's been
sure,
removed.
open and open.
All right, fantastic. All right, no further questions. Thank you so much.
And on that insulated panel, is there an airspace between the CMU and that insulated panel? Are you gonna put that on blocking or?
The airspace is to the interior, so the way we're thinking about this is isolated insulated mass. So you create a thermal break and insulation on the outside, so that's about an R7 on the outside. There's no airspace that creates an air break, but on the interior, on the CMUs, you'll fur that out. You'll do 5-foil, so you've got reflective barrier, and then you drywall. So you get insulation, thermal mass,
So
reflective
what's the total
insulation.
thickness of the metal insulated panels?
3.5 inches.
Okay, because on your drawings, you're really showing it really skinny, but I think there's some more mass in there. And where I'm going with that is that it'll affect your trim, because the trim's gonna be on top of your siding as well, right? You're not gonna have the trim behind the siding.
No, yeah, I mean, typical of 5-inch lap, it's gonna sit just in front of the leading edge of that 5-inch lap.
Okay, but when you get down to your baseboard, your skirt trim,
Right.
the hardy board's gonna be set back on the CMU
It'll
directly,
set-
so you're gonna have a.
Yeah,
reveal
you'll have
to
a piece of drip edge that drips off the bottom edge of that lap and back behind the hardy trim.
While we're on the site plan, I'm gonna start there. So 18 inches finished floor elevation, that's consistent with the two
Yeah, it's
adjacent
12 inch to the
homes?
south and 18 inch to the north, so we took the higher of the two.
Okay. And you got 6-inch steps everywhere to get kind of up there. What about your front yard setback? Did you look at the adjacent houses and?
Yeah, it's 4 foot to the south, 8 foot to the north, so we took the average and went 6 feet from the front.
Okay, good. Okay. Let's see, covered there. You didn't bring any samples of the Plygem system?
No, I actually called and asked for them, they haven't shipped it yet.
Okay, and I think you made a lot of nice changes from the last time.
I appreciate that.
You know, that we're getting closer. There's still some trim details. If you want to pull up the elevations, I guess the line drawings. I think you made good progress with the windows. Before they were like one whole panel, now they're 1/1, so that's, you know, better for the district. You trimmed out your windows and edge trim, so that's moving ahead.
So do you want to see the materials or the?
Line drawings, yeah,
Line drawings, okay.
for now.
Okay.
Those are renderings.
Oh, you want lines? Okay.
Okay. So, a couple of adjustments, things. Is that how you're gonna trim out the windows? I don't think that's quite right. I think you want
5-inch
your
picture frame, Hardy.
head trim would be, go all the way across, and then your side, your jambs would go underneath your head.
Yes. Yeah, they get lapped underneath, you're right.
Okay, so I think that's just a drawing convention, no big deal there. But I do like that you've taken more time and effort to make these windows 1/1 here, so that's good. On the front elevation, is there a reason why those two windows on the bottom left are lower than everything else?
No, I don't like that either. No, I'd say the top, so those are 305s and the ones at the porch are 304s. So I think when they drew it, they just,
Yeah, I think they need to be brought up. Everywhere else, it's
Agreed.
well aligned on the second floor and everything. That one just has a
yeah,
droopy
I
eyelid or
absolutely will make sure that's consistent on the top.
something. Okay. And I like what you did with the gable. You know, did you look at, one thing that we talked about at the last hearing was maybe looking at a different roof plan, roof configuration. You're still what you had before. Do you look at any alternatives?
Yeah, we've spun it. We looked at all sorts of different, but because of that 2-foot inset, it really it leads to you having a side-to-side apex with the gable ends on the sides because of the way we've relieved. The only way to cure that would be to make one mono front end or to have dissimilar overhangs on the front, which we just couldn't not make awkward. Yeah. So, and I do kind of like the way the gable breaks midway across and has a second relief. So, you know, we talked a lot of things about how to break that gable up and put a 10-inch border on the bottom and then change it to colors, but you know, I'm certainly receptive to all sorts of different aesthetics. I did end up liking the way that dissimilar board and batten looked.
Yeah, I do too. I think it breaks up that side mass a lot. You know, the heartburn that I still have is on the, you know, just the major roof slopes. All the precedents in the area that you've shown us on for all the adjacent properties all have gable ends exposed to the front. All
right.
of a sudden now you're gonna turn it 90 degrees and.
Yeah, there's quite a few gables in the neighborhood that are on the right and left. You know, and I can certainly provide pictures of that. There is definitely some consistent front to back slopes in the neighborhood, so it's not starkly dissimilar.
Well, the issue is more of having the slope metal roof right there to on your front elevation.
Right.
I think that's the bigger issue because I think you've addressed the gable ends fine. It's just that you've got a lot of roof there from a flat line drawing. Now, when you're standing on the street, you're not really going to see that, so it's kind of minimized. Your slope is 4 and 12.
412s, yep. Yeah, so I mean, that's what you kind of get when you look at the renderings, is that 412 from the street on a 2-story. You don't see a lot of that standing seam roof.
Okay. And I know we've kind of talked about well, Liz had mentioned protecting that side door. You're probably going to want to do something there. I don't think it affects your setback, but you know, there's a lot of details that are consistent.
I can definitely do a rain shed over that roof.
Yeah, I think you can work with
idea.
Staff on something like that. There's certainly precedent with that in the front porch but you're gonna want to protect that. So the porte cochere, you know, we talked about before about trying to break up that massing. I know where you're going, because that is a difficult design element there of how
It
to,
is.
how
I
to
mean,
balance that and, you know.
And we've been working, so staff and I have been working on this for 5 months, you know, because it started with an attached garage and, you know, I cited all the historic reference to justify that. Then I did a front with a recessed garage and we went round and round. And then right at the last minute, that's why it was a little awkward last time I sat in front of you, because we changed it 24 hours beforehand. So this is kind of, with a 50-foot lot, this was as close as I could get to not giving up the backyard, because I really do want to use that as open space and vegetative. And with 3 porte-cocheres within 6 houses around me, I felt it was a good reference point.
Yeah, well, a porte-cochere by definition is kind of like, it's an open porch, right?
Right.
You know, so this is only open on 2 sides, not a third side.
Right.
Which, you know, and I think maybe there's some treatment there, you know, maybe we can add a couple windows in there. They don't need to be like, you know, trimmed out with columns and, you know, base pediment and columns like you do see in the district, but maybe some windows there could break that up, that elevation a little bit. And I think that's probably a minor.
Yeah, it's minor. It is tucked next to another house and next to a fence, so you don't see it from the seat scrape. I certainly was planning on vegetating it and run vines up it, but if you guys want to see a couple windows in the porte-cochere, it's not a problem.
In your standing seam, we're gonna go back to the roof now. It's white.
White, 1-inch metal standing seam roof.
Okay, so that's gonna kind of match the trim.
It'll match the trim.
Typically, I think in the district, we see more like galvanized, you know, roofing.
Yeah,
Or-
the intent was twofold. 1, it matches the trim, and 2, it meets cool roof standards, because once again, I'm trying to hit that super low heat gain in this climate.
Okay. And you confirmed that there's no fencing on the site, right?
2 gates, that's it.
It's existing, right?
The existing fencing's coming down, and there's 2 gates connecting to the side gates of the apartment, set back by the side doors of both sides.
Okay. No other questions? Any other questions?
Could you show us again how the windows are placed within the wall construction that you're thinking about? Because
Sure.
traditionally, that's going to make or break this project, I feel.
Yeah,
And
so
also,
it's-
why does the drawing that you're presenting to us in regard to the front porch show no porch? That elevation we just saw had no elevated porch.
It was just so you could see the details, and the porch was added into the renderings, just so, because
There seems to be a lot of inconsistency between what you're saying to us and what you're presenting to us.
the porch details I've got right here for you, and then the renderings depict that porch as well. So I'm happy to show it to you in any way that you would
But
like to.
that rendering doesn't even appear to be 18 inches off the ground. And the elevation you just showed us doesn't appear to have a
So-
porch that's elevated 18 inches
So
off
this,
the ground.
if you look, this white band here is that hardy board trim. You can see it up on all of them. That white trim is that 18-inch elevation off of grade.
Could you show the elevation that we were just looking at?
I can, in the very front floor plan.
Because it was the side elevation we were just looking at.
So yeah, so you can see this is 42 spot elevation right here, and top of slab is 43.5.
But the side elevation we were just looking at. No, the drawing of the elevation, not the rendering.
Okay, so that right there is the detail.
But I don't see an elevated porch on this side here, do you?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I don't see an elevated porch.
Right, I mean, yeah, so this line drawing, we can drop the dirt down, right? Because this porch sits a foot and a half above ambient grade.
Okay, well, there seems to be a lot of inconsistency between what you're saying and the drawings you're presenting, which become the official record for this case. The second question I had was if you could show us how you're placing the windows within this.
Absolutely. So they're conventional center set on CMU double hung windows.
Are they, traditionally windows within the historic district are set back. These, again, it's very difficult to read the drawings, but they appear to be almost flush with the surface.
So on a masonry mount, they're right in the center of the 6-inch CMU. So they're gonna be set into the center of the CMU. So you get the outside of the CMU plus the
Can you zoom in
siding.
on that drawing? Because I think this is a really important detail to focus on. You know, whether this project is successful within a historic district, really, you're not showing really a true window construction in that drawing. This is supposed to be an architectural section. I see a sheet of glass.
You wanna see the window frame surrounding that glass?
Do you have that?
I-
That's typically what's asked of the drawings, is that, you know, they're architectural drawings. This seems to be kind of a sketch. Okay, well, thank you. You're saying, though, it's in the middle of the wall, so what's how far back is the frame of the window from the surface of the,
3, 6, 7, it'll be set 4 inches back from the outside edge of the siding.
and is there a sill?
There's a sill to the inside and then there's a casement to the outside.
Is the sill expressed on the outside architectural?
Yeah, there's a gap from the front of that frame to the outside edge that's horizontal that abuts the
Does
picture
that-
frame.
Is that indicated on the drawing we're looking at?
It is, so this is more of kind of a structural construction detail for a CMU wall. If you want to see the details of the window frame and the trim and how that all locks together close up, I'd have to have that generated.
Okay, thanks you for answering the question.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we're gonna go, you have a few minutes if you'd like to summarize what we've discussed, if any changes that you'd like to see, or just address anything else, and then we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing after that.
No, I think we covered the things that were asked as far as gates and HVAC placement and elevation. I mean, the only clarification is if there's still any concern about how the colors got rendered and what was provided, that color would be an accurate depiction of what the intention is for that board and batten and the trim. That is actually a picture from the manufacturer's website.
Yeah, one of the other pictures that you showed had a dark colored house too, so there is some precedent for that. The gray is fine, I'm fine with the gray, I just saw black on the renderings.
Okay, well, we're gonna close the public hearing and then we can discuss. So if are you all good?
I'm all good.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and we can discuss the case amongst ourselves with any observations. Start with Mr. Ryan.
No, I think overall the project looks nice. As we kind of went over, there's some details that I think the applicant has to work through, but I think they can work through most of them with staff. Staff has had quite a bit of experience, you know, detailing windows throughout the district and all that kind of stuff. And I think he should be on a good track to get a good project out of Newport.
I can't support this project. I believe the drawings that have been presented don't have all the information that we normally request of an applicant. I also believe that the porte cochere, although there's lots of precedent, the issues have been brought up, that normally they're much more open. I can appreciate the fact that based on the engineering of the house, that it needs, that has to be taken into account. But I haven't heard any solution that I think is really gonna solve that problem. Currently, to me, it looks like it's a car wash, frankly. And without additional detailing, without additional finessing, I think it's really not gonna appear to be, to have the historical precedent that the applicant is claiming it's gonna have. And then, secondly, I'm still a little bit concerned about if I understand correctly, it's a metal siding. I'm not sure that's even allowed on a single-family home in the district. Correct me if I'm wrong. If it is, we certainly haven't seen one. And the fact that we don't have a sample or additional information on it, I'm seeing it on multifamily, but not on a
You can see the
single.
industrial and, you know, pre-engineered metal buildings in the district too.
Right, but this is a residential street. So again, we're looking for precedent, and once you deviate from precedent, then I think, you know, understanding that material and how it's going to be detailed and how it's going to be perceived within the context of the historic street becomes vital. So I can't support the project as presented.
I don't know that I agree with what you're saying. There were some things that, as you guys brought them up and talked about them, made me question it a little bit more. So yeah, I'm not sure I would 100% be able to support the project either based on the guidelines.
I'm of the same opinion that the metal siding, the lack of window details, and, you know, the wall section doesn't show any of the exterior of the trim, the siding, it's just incomplete. Concerned about the massing, so at this point I can't support the project either.
So I'm with Jose on this project for a couple of reasons. One is the drawings need to reflect, you know, there's an 18-inch height from grade. There's steps that we're just imagining they're there because they're not showing the drawings. I think it needs to be a complete submittal that shows all that and updated on the massing too. The reference to the windows, I agree. That's just in vain. It's just double hung. You know, how is that detail going to work? And then I would like to see a sample of the siding, for sure, if it's going to be something new. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think the project, there's still issues with the project, and, you know, the submittal's not complete. You know, there's a lot of things that are still moving around a lot and being determined. I tended to give it a little bit more flexibility because it was up in the northeast quadrant, which isn't more of a traditional neighborhood, but it's still part of the historic district. So with issues like, you know, I still have issues with the roof slopes and how that works, and I'm not sure that looks appropriate with that, you know, sloped roof coming to the street edge, and the porte cochere of how that's being addressed. Yes, given there's only 5 feet there on the side, it's not a whole lot of room to make something happen there, but it's still a blank wall for that neighbor. The metal siding, you know, I think it looks like, we don't know what it looks like. That's the issue. Really. In my mind, I think it looks like, you know, lap siding, like, you know, and I'm sure this is something that came up before on this board at some point in time, where they always had wood siding, and then all of a sudden hardy board came out. It's like, oh, what's this new material? It's, you know, cementous fiberboard, you know. So now there's a new product. You know, I think everyone's concerned is we don't want it to look like vinyl siding, you know, but if it's like a wood grain and it's a different material, looks the same, then I think that has some, you know, I think we all get used to having a change of materials over time with new products that, you know, we'll say look historic, which I think achieves what we need to do. But yeah, I think this project still has some issues that just need to be kind of worked through and make it more compatible with the district. So I think we have a general board feeling here of where we're going with things, right?
Just one more comment, just curious what you guys think about calling this a porte cochere. I don't think it's a porte cochere. It's a covered carport, right? It's
Sure.
not, you're not going in, dropping somebody up and then pulling out and hanging out like what a porte cochere is.
Right.
I think we just should call it what it is and not try to figure out if it's a porte cochere,
Yeah.
because it's not.
Okay. Well, we're just following the drawings.
Yeah, and I would just like to be clear. My objection is probably to the lack of information, and the drawings don't suggest a true reflection of the dimensions and the materiality and all that. I mean, in terms of creating an industrial-like residential building on a historic street is an exciting idea, and we encourage it. The fact that this house is going to be so energy efficient is, you know, fantastic. I'm all for those kinds of steps towards new types of housing in the historic district. But for instance, you just mentioned the metal siding might have a wood grain texture. See, I would be personally against that, and I don't think that really follows the guidelines. If you're gonna use a new material, I'm more concerned about the scale. Traditionally, we haven't been looking for, new materials that replicate, different kinds of
We don't
materials.
know. I mean, we're-
Yeah, we don't
we're
know,
guessing.
we don't know, but I mean, these are the kind of questions that I think are just so crucial. So, don't want to discourage the applicant, because I think you have a clear, from your presentation, it seems like you have a really clear perception of what you're trying to achieve. It's just not being transmitted to us in a way that we feel confident.
And I think the applicant has made some good steps here in
Oh,
addressing
absolutely.
the windows and the trim and trimming out,
Yeah.
the siding, and those are, they're going in the right direction. Just,
Yeah.
it needs a little bit more work to get it
I-
more consistent.
Yeah, and I don't know where this is going, but I really think it would be crucial if it comes back before us, that the applicant meet with staff, maybe you have, but it doesn't appear that the drawings presented to us, staff would have known right away. It wasn't enough information for us to make a decision.
The,
I'm happy to go and proceed. I'm not happy to, I don't have confidence in the project anymore, so.
So you don't want to continue?
The applicant's requesting a vote, please.
okay. Okay, we'll entertain a motion on the proposed case in front of us, BLC 22-152.
Okay. This is a move to deny a certificate of appropriateness for drawings and document as presented at this public hearing in BLC 22-152 for the property located at 2903 North 10th Street, because based upon the findings of fact and based upon the drawings presented at this public hearing, the proposed project is inconsistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with the City of Tampa for the following reasons. Incomplete presentation of a site plan. Incomplete presentation in regards to wall sections detailing the architectural placement of the windows. Inconsistent architectural referencing of historic porte-cocheres as they appear in the district. Inadequate information regarding the detailing, well, actually the material, the siding proposed and its architectural detailing. And inconsistency in providing any material samples and colors regarding the proposed project. Have I missed anything major? I guess I should reference, there's still some question about the overall massing and the relationship of the massing to the pitches of the roof.
Yeah, I'd almost relate that to the site plan, but if you want to mention that, that's fine.
Yeah, and just an inconsistency with the proposed massing and massing of the project, specifically the positioning and the slopes of the gables.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor of said denial, say aye.
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 Well, can you,
Opposed?
Opposed? Aye.
Okay. So 5-1, motion carries for denial of BLC 22-152. move on to our next case, is BLC 22-208.
So again, Dennis Fernandez with the Architecture Review and Historic Preservation staff. Here on BLC 22-208, which is a request for new construction of an accessory structure and site improvements. We're going to also begin with a photo essay. Again, we begin with the orientation in the district. This is located on Fifth Avenue, just off of 17th Street. You can see on the 1929 Sanborn map, the subject property. There was at one time an accessory structure. It's no longer existing. This is the aerial showing Fifth Avenue and 17th Street, and the subject property located in the green box. This is the front elevation of the primary structure. As you move towards the east, it's very obviously a lot of landscaping, so it's difficult to see the east elevation, but you see the side yard there. This is the structure that abuts to the east. Moving back the opposite way to the west. See the side elevation of the property? There's a fence that runs along the side and around the front. This is the view on Fifth Avenue to the east. And then turning around back to the west, this is a subject property on the left. Across the street, there's a commercial structure. Back around the back of the house, this is the rear elevation. You see there's a door that's elevated, and then the area just to the south where the location of the accessory structure is being proposed. It says looking back down 17th Avenue to the south, subject property is on the left. Turning around, looking the opposite way to the north, across Fifth Avenue. And then immediately across the street to the west is a restaurant. There is an alley along the rear of the property. It doesn't function for transportation standards. To enter this particular parcel. So the applicant is proposing to enter off of 17th Street. With that, I'll ask the agent to come to the podium and present the drawings.
Morning. My name's Steve Corder. I'm the agent for the homeowner. And basically, we just proposed to do a detached garage with a bonus room above in the rear of the property. Basically, I met with staff a couple times on this project. We've met our setbacks off the alley. We do have a 2-foot overhang eave, which matches the house, which is a exposed 2x6, very simple, exposed 2x6 rafter tails. And we are proposing to do hardy lap siding to match the neighborhood, even though the existing structure has been stuccoed. And we're going to match the metal standing seam roof, which is on the existing house. And also to match the existing house and the house just adjacent to it, we're going to do all wood impact Florida Geldwin doors and windows. So it's pretty straightforward, simple accessory structure. I think we meet all the historical requirements. I did noticed this morning that that attached roof from the existing house to the garage needs to be deleted. It wasn't deleted off the drawing on the, when we went to redo the drawings. But, everything else, I believe we've, accomplished. I mean, it's just a typical single-story block with a second-story frame with a 4-pitch roof to match the existing house that's already there. And then the color palette is gonna be this yellow, because that's the yellow on the house, and white with the trim. And it's all gonna be 1x6 hardy trim. There is no trim detail on the existing house to match. There's no, so basically we drew it just to match the existing house that's there. So, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward, simple project.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, I mean, whatever questions or information I can
Okay.
give you.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez?
Did you sign your site plan?
Yes, sir.
Maybe put it back on there. Okay, awesome.
Dennis Fernandez with staff. We did coordinate with Mr. Corder on his detailing. I did want him to recap the solution for the driveway material, the hardscape. He will be required to go through a design exception 1 process for the height increase above 15 feet. That's usually something that is consistent with the district, particularly in these types of situations in Ybor. Did want to talk about how the windows are going to be installed to achieve a reveal, because he is doing concrete block construction on the lower level and wood frame construction above, so that there is a difference in technique there on how you get the reveal. He did eliminate the connector. We did have concerns about the connector, so we do appreciate that. The garage door selection, we want to talk about the design and the width of the garage door, see if there's some opportunity maybe to get something a little bit more compatible with the district. There are some windows along the alley. They're a little unusual in configuration. Maybe you can talk about those and why those need to be that particular location and shape. Besides that, the normal cut sheets and samples of materials that are applicable. I think in this case, windows and garage door are probably the 2 more prominent ones that we would like to have some information on. With that, we do find the application consistent, and I believe it is ready for your consideration at this point.
Okay. Anyone here from the public wishing to comment on the case? Seeing none. We can begin with some questions for the applicant, starting with Mr. Winmiller.
So looking at this, yeah, could you go over the driveway detail and how it will be paved or patterned?
Well, there is an existing, actually, if you saw the picture earlier, there is existing huge concrete slab there that comes in off 17th Avenue for the driveway, which we've already conceded to redo the granite curbing there, but it's already cut. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut in and put in 2 decorative ribbons to match the historic.
Can you zoom in on the top, please?
How do I do that?
Well, all right.
Dennis needs help.
You want to show this
I
one?
don't think that's consistent.
That's where the red dot is coming
Yeah, we
in.
got a red dot.
You just clear it from the,
That's okay, let me just.
So 20 foot.
Yeah, He doesn't want to clear it. Just make it bigger. Sorry about that. I'll move it over.
Yeah. So it calls for a new driveway with the 24-inch decorative ribbons.
And then for the sort of bonus room upstairs, so would that be air conditioned? Would this building have an
Yeah,
AC
the bonus
unit?
room upstairs will be air conditioned, will be located underneath the staircase.
Staircase. And then, could we go to the elevations for the project? And so will there be any exterior lights Either on flanking
You
the
know,
garage doors or?
I searched the neighborhood and I'm looking for a coach light, for code for the doors, and I have not found any on any of the existing houses on the street, so that's something I've actually had to deal with before, that we just go into staff and I'll get one approved when we get to that point of the project. But no, I did not find anything to be consistent with the neighborhood. Most of them have the, chandeliers in the front porch. So obviously, we're not doing that on a garage.
And then, let's see, was there anything else? That's all the questions I had for now. Thank you.
Do you have the floor plan you can show us?
Yes.
And how wide is the garage?
17 by 17 and a half.
And is that a double door then? Is it a two-car garage?
It's a single-car garage.
Single car, but with a rather large door.
Yeah, it has a standard side garage door. Ron wanted me to look into getting a wood or more historically correct garage door.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of the scale here, because
Yeah,
it's a single-car garage, but it almost appears like a double. And then, what is the material of that you're indicating against the addition and the historic house, or the existing house?
The material,
Of the walkway, I'm sorry.
currently there's a very large concrete elevated pad, which we're just gonna get ripped out, and we're just gonna go back with a regular concrete stepping down from the house to the grade.
Is there gonna be any fencing that's gonna shield this backyard from the
The
street?
fences, there is existing fencing on the alley, and on the 17th Street, there is existing wood fencing already.
But is there any fencing between the house and the garage?
No,
So all that concrete's gonna be exposed?
we're ripping out most of the concrete and then going back with just a set of steps.
And the ribbons you're proposing, what's in between the ribbons?
Actually, concrete. It's all concrete now. We were just gonna cut in the historic ribbons.
Oh, okay, it's a decorative feature.
Yeah, as a decorative feature coming off the street.
Oh,
So it's all concrete. There is a concrete driveway there now. We were told that if we can cut in decorative ribbons, that would
Okay. I was
conform.
confused because your site plan is indicating a series of materials,
I wasn't sure.
but thank you for the clarification. I think that's the only questions I have, although if you want to discuss the placement of the windows, staff suggested that perhaps they don't seem to be as consistent with the patterns we see within the
So,
historic districts.
the placement of the windows is we added windows into the job. The homeowner is quite a collector of a lot of stuff. So he wanted as much walls, there's a lot of, you saw the rooster outside. So we added those windows for aesthetic reasons. He wanted as much wall space as possible. So to achieve the look and adding the window, and I actually suggested it for more natural light because it would have been like a cave in there. That's why those windows are placed where they are. So,
But can you put up the elevation? And this might be more for design review, but it just seems that the purpose of the guidelines is to kind of spread out soften the massing of a large wall with fenestrations that are consistent with those we find within the guidelines. And your proposal does neither. It doesn't help break up the mass, and then they're also horizontal as opposed to vertical. So that's probably going to come up when we talk about design. All right, those are the only questions I have.
I don't have any questions right now, but I reserve the right.
I likewise don't have any questions.
I just have one quick little comment. I mean, you mentioned the width of the door. The first thing I'm noticing on the drawing, the jambs don't align with the windows above. Am I reading that right? Yeah. That could be part of the issue, but really looks good to me. I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was gonna bring that up because I think the garage door is a little bit too big for that massing. It's 12-foot door, correct?
I believe so.
I think 10 would probably be a little bit more appropriate. And then you've got these large windows on top that don't align with the garage door. They're bigger than the house, so like by definition, by the house windows, I'm sorry. You know, it's an accessory structure, so it should be secondary. So I think the windows are a little bit too big there, maybe, and I think they should align with the garage door. And the garage door, is that what you're proposing, kind of a panelized system with the half rounds?
No, that's what they drew, but that is not what we're proposing to do. We're gonna build a more period historic garage door
Yeah.
profile. That's just an architect's crappy drawing, so.
Okay. No offense taken.
It's not your drawing.
It's not my drawing, got it.
Right.
All right, so yes, we need to align the windows with the garage door. I think the garage door needs to become smaller. The detail of the window with the shutters, I see that detail on the existing house, so I think that was a nice, you know, connecting element there. Do you have elevations of the other two sides? Because, you know, what's happening, okay. So you have a door and then one window placed in there, okay. And I think those, like on the rear the east elevation, those are restrooms behind there, so you really don't want windows there, but that facade's pretty tight. The one up against the north elevation, you know, maybe there's some additional fenestration there, but I think the windows need to become a little bit smaller, a little bit more proportionate.
The regular single hung windows become smaller?
There's still double hung windows, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's, okay, I got it, all right.
Okay. In your metal roof, you said the pitch is 4 and 12?
I believe so, 412.
Okay, and what kind of roof is that? Is that
It's a metal standing seam roof,
a standing seam?
Yeah.
5B crimp
yeah.
seam, okay. Okay. All right, so we're on the wall section now. So you have CMU for the first floor, then it goes up to wood framing. So one of the details on your wall section there, those windows need to move inboard. They can't be on the exterior like that, especially with a frame. You got to inset them a little bit and then trim them out so that they need to have some depth. They can't be flush with the
Yeah.
outside face. Okay. Okay, and back to the site plan. Is the alley open? Or is it closed?
The alley is, I don't believe it's accessible from 17th Street. There's a vacant lot behind it, is the only reason I even knew there was an alley there, but it is not accessible. It's not used.
Okay. So- But it's not vacated, well, no, it's not vacated, it's just not used, I guess. What does that say? Unimproved, okay. All right, so there's an existing driveway there, correct? So are you putting in, it says a new driveway with 24-inch decorator, so you're taking out the old one and then
We're cutting in the ribbons and the deck.
just cutting in the ribbons?
Yeah.
But the existing concrete stays? Okay. And how far does that driveway go right now? Does it go all the way where the accessory structure is proposed?
Yes. Yeah, there's massive amount of concrete back there. We'll probably have to take some out for the foundation.
Okay. And what's the setback off of the alley? Is that 8 inches?
No, it's 2'8" off the alley. It was 2'5". We pushed it to 2'8". That was one of the original things with transportation that we had to overcome. So we made it by 3 inches from the overhang to the alley.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because then you start getting into fire separations and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. Okay. And what's the distance from the house? Is that 10 feet? Yeah.
Dennis is gonna have to zoom in for me.
Looks about 10 feet. Yeah, okay, looks like 10 feet, okay.
Yeah, I know we meant to setbacks and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
whole bunch of new numbers on the
Yeah.
screen now. Hold on, give us a minute, please.
You have some questions?
Well, I did, but now I see the air conditioner unit, so I'm good there. So there's a gate, I just am trying to understand the fencing. It looks like there's a gate now, a new gate?
There's an existing gate. There's an existing double gate on 17th on the existing driveway.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Can you go back to the northern elevation? Thank you, thank you. Okay, scoot it down, there you go. Okay, stop there. It looks like your roof, are your roof and your door centered, or is that
No.
just your drawing again?
It will be on the building.
Got it.
It won't be on that drawing, but yeah.
Okay, got it. And then,
It's the architect's fault.
I know, I
See?
wanted to know
You
if it
know-
was
you
the
know what I'm
crappy
talking about.
architect drawing or what the deal was.
We've revised this plan. We've met with staff quite a few times, and we've met all the transportation. We met all the criterias for all the things, and we are down to refining the drawings and getting the decorative, all this, the windows and this off-centered thing done.
What did you, and you may have said it and I missed it, what kind of door is that side door?
It's gonna be an all-wood Geldwin. I believe it's the only one approved for the historic district.
Okay.
I don't know if it's gonna be, I do believe it's proposed to be a single pane, but, well, it all depends on what staff approves.
Okay. That's all I have.
Might be next to that window.
Yeah. Those were my only questions.
Any other questions?
Can I ask one quick question? That metal roof that's shown there, that's the old connector, right, that you're removing?
I'm sorry?
Is that the old connector that you're removing, or it's gonna be an overhang over the?
On the
door?
north elevation? No, that's over the door. Oh, wait, is that the?
I
I
think
thought
that's,
that was being removed.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
that is the,
connector.
so
yeah, no, that's getting removed.
that's getting removed. but you
Yeah,
should
we're
have
not,
something over the
yeah,
door.
I'm sorry, that isn't a roof for that was the connector from the house to the garage, which they told us we cannot do, so
Right,
that's
so
getting
you're showing it
removed.
here, you're showing it on the site plan as a shadow, there's other places you need to cross it out,
Okay,
but at least I would add an overhang over the door,
Yeah,
something to protect the
of
door.
course, yeah.
That's all.
Any additional questions? And I think that awning could be, is filed within the district, common detail especially would fit, no problem with this
Yeah.
style. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and, you have a few minutes if you'd like to summarize any comments of anything that we discussed. I think there were some changes that we,
Yeah, there are some changes that I knew about coming in that just haven't been done on the revised plans, and, but yeah, there's, I mean, changing the window sizes, and that's not gonna be a problem with the customer, it is what it is, so, I mean, I don't have anything else really to add.
okay. We're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. The commissioners can now have a discussion on the case amongst ourselves. Mr. Perez?
I'm good with the project. Just revising the windows in the garage door.
Mr. Hammer?
I want to just echo the same comments. I'm good with it. I think the window detail, getting it recessed, reducing the size of the garage door are conditions I would look for.
I would agree.
I guess I'm gonna be the dissenter again today, and, once again, we're being asked to look at drawings that aren't complete. We're asked to imagine, and, I appreciate the applicant's willingness to agree with all the comments we're making, but the question is, why haven't they been changed before presenting it to us? I think as a board, we're really shirking our responsibility by placing so much faith in the written transcript of this meeting as opposed to the drawings, and asking putting a lot on staff. I see a lot of issues with the project. We didn't even talk about the windows on the side that staff was commenting on.
What's that, sorry?
Yeah, we didn't look at the railing. If you look at the drawing of the railings for the staircase, there's no historical precedent for that kind of railing. The spacing of the ribbon cuts aren't consistent with, the whole point of the historical pattern of this. Again, I mean, this should be a very straightforward project, and it appears to be, but at this point, I'm just sort of philosophically saying, where does this stop? Where do we, where do we just keep? I appreciate the interest in keeping the agendas moving forward, but I'm uncomfortable again with approving this without seeing it again.
But I'd be consistent with last time too, in the sense that I'm generally comfortable with staff taking some of this responsibility, and I mean to give us the, to give the notion of whether the project conforms with the guidelines or not as well, which we base a lot of our decisions off of. So I'm in agreement with the other commissioners that with some tightening up, that I think staff can handle most of these changes that we would like to see.
Yeah, I can share your concerns. I think one of the general, if we look at these two cases, it's kind of an issue of the presentations are getting looser and looser, not detailed as much as we're getting like, they almost look like fax copies up there on the projector. So it's hard to discern that information that we need to make informed decisions. So I share your sentiment on that. That being said, I think this project is very consistent with the district. It's an accessory structure. I think the presentation, I think the applicant probably should have talked about the design exception requested here a little bit and mentioned that. A lot of these other items should have been discussed and presented to us. I think there's a few things that we can make adjustments on that we talked about. Even like the issue with the Concrete River Drive, until we started asking the questions on what that actually is, I don't think any of us knew what was going on there. That being said, I think the project is consistent with the district from a general standpoint. There's a lot of these things that the staff can deal with the applicant on, and I think that's something that we could put in as a condition to make these windows smaller, work on the alignment, have a proper garage door put in there, railing details of how that's going to work. But I think the general intent is met. And staff can handle a few of these issues moving forward. Entertain a motion.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. If the board is inclined to grant a certificate of appropriateness, please remember that staff stated that a design exception is needed in order to approve the height regarding the accessory structure. That would have to be a condition.
Sorry, so for the motion, we would just have to mention that the design exception has to be approved, or what?
An approval of design exception as a condition.
Oh, an approval, okay, got it.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll make a motion, move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 22-208 for the property located at 1701 East 5th Avenue with the following conditions. That the applicant revise the west facade of the accessory structure to shrink the upper window sizes, to shrink the garage to be 10 feet in width, and to align the edges of both the windows and the garage. That the applicant provide a roof over the door, over the exit door to the garage to the main house, to be approved with staff. That any exterior light fixtures to work with staff and for the approval of those on the accessory structure. To revise the detail for the windows in the accessory structure so that they are inset, and submit those to staff for approval. To provide a driveway plan with the cut patterns in the concrete to be approved by staff. And, let's see, and a final railing selection and any door hardware and such to be approved by staff as well. And all this is contingent on the approval of the design exception 1 that the applicant is also seeking to obtain. Because based on the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that it meets the design criteria for new construction additions for height and width, facade width, setback, spacing, alignment, similarity of details and forms to the main structure and building materials.
I'll second.
All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Okay, we'll move on to our final case of the day, BLC 22-228/RAZ rezoning 22-111.
So again, good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Your final item on the agenda this morning is consideration of a request to rezone a property in the local historic district from YC2, which is principally a residential zoning classification, to YC9, which is a site plan controlled classification. The property is a contributing structure. I will begin with the photo essay. Again, starting with the 1929 Sanborn map, see the subject property in the green box just off of what today is Columbus Drive, historically was Michigan Avenue, between 12th and 13th Street. This is the proximity in the historic district. It is north of I-4 in the VM Ybor Neighborhood Association. And the aerial with the subject property in the green box. When this aerial was taken, the site abutting to the west was vacant. There is now new construction on that site. This is the front elevation, very intact historic structure. Moving around to the east, see the proximity to the property line. This is the abutting structure to the east. Moving back around to the west, see the subject property. There was sort of a disruption of the driveway while the adjacent new construction was being built, and I believe that's remedied today. I think the applicant can go more into that. See the driveway and then the adjacent new construction to the west. Looking back down Columbus Drive towards the west, and then the opposite way to the east. These are the structures across the street to the south, across Columbus Drive. This is the rear of the subject property. And then looking from the driveway towards the back of the property with the structure being on the right. Your task this morning is to motion a recommendation to City Council. I think our legal counsel may just review that with you prior to the motion. Other than that, I'll have the applicant come up and talk about the site plan and the waivers that are being requested. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, good morning. I'm Gerald McCants, the owner of the property in which I intend to rezone from YC2 to YC9. I have some copies of site plan I can pass up, and I can break it apart, because there's multiple site plans in there. Everybody can have it. Yeah, I don't have. This multiple site plans in the package, so everybody has a copy. I only have 3 separate copies, but they can be broken apart, because there's separate multiple site plans in each package. Everybody can have it. Okay. So what I have is, right. So within the packet, there's 2 site plans. One site plan showing just some site parameters and data, and the second site plan just has a tree schedule. So, but the site plan is exactly pretty much the same. All right. So looking at the site plan, you see my existing 1-story structure was originally built and located on the parcel with the existing garage or shed structure in the back. I'm not proposing to make any exterior improvements to the property. I'm only looking to rezone the property YC2 to YC9. And underneath YC2, there was a provision that a business can be approved through council approval. So it was recommended to change from YC2 to YC9 to operate my practice. I have a small architectural practice. So the only, because of the road work that was improved last year and completed early February this year, there are parallel parking spaces that are aligned on the north and south boundary Columbus Drive. And in doing so, there were aprons that were installed along existing vehicle access to each property. And also with the house being constructed to the west, there was demolition of existing ribbons that was previously there, as you saw in the pictures presented previously. And so what I'm also proposing to do is to install new driveway ribbons, conforming with the 232 pattern that was there previously, and extend it along the side of the western boundary of the property line. So that'd be the only improvements I'll make to the property, is reinstalling the driveway that was demolished during the construction of the house to the west. I am requesting 4 waivers that is on the sheet labeled A2 of 4 in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, so the first waiver is to reduce the parking from 2 to 0. And the second waiver is to reduce the required landscape buffer from 15 to 3 with a 6-foot high fence to the north. There is adjacent fencing along the north and eastern side of the property currently. And the third waiver is to reduce the landscape buffer from 15 to 1 with a 16-foot tall fence to the east. And the fourth would be to reduce the required landscape buffer from 15 to 0 with a 16-foot tall fence to the west. So that would allow, and I'm doing that in efforts to maintain existing consistency of the house and to not disrupt the existing tree that's located to the rear of the property, which I want to remain intact and not impact within its protected tree radius. That's pretty much the rear of the parcel here. And that tree in question was shown previously, but here's another image of that tree and the location. So that concludes my presentation, so I'll see the rest of my time back to council.
So again, the Commissioners, Dennis Fernandez with Architecture Review and Historic Preservation staff. With regards to applications for rezoning, changes to land use classifications, or comprehensive plan amendments, Your duty is to review and recommend reasonable land use changes to the extent necessary to preserve the historical integrity and appearance of the locally designated, in this case, historic district, in accordance with the applicable design standards. The staff evaluates this application as consistent with the City Code of Ordinances under 27-295, which I just quoted from. We do ask that if there is any new fencing that will be added, that would be a wood fence. It seems like the fencing is existing for the moment, though. And we did review the waivers. There is a parking reduction from 2 to 0, which is being sort of driven through the necessity of dimensional requirements. Jonathan Scott with the Transportation Division is here if you have any questions about that particular waiver. Other than that, I think this is ready for your consideration unless legal counsel wants to add anything.
Anyone here from the public wishing to comment, please? Seeing none, we can start with some questions from the applicant.
My only question is, I get the reduction in landscape buffers, but I'm not quite sure I understand why the reduction from parking from 2 to 0. Could we go over that just a little more detail?
Right, in talking with the city, there was a provision to have 2 parking spaces. And when, of course, I have enough parking space for tandem front to back, but there is a requirement to have like 1 ADA parking space, right? And then you would have to have some type of configuration where it would have backup space for that ADA parking space. So we did locate one in the rear, but it would intrude upon the grand oak tree that's in the rear, and I did not want to remove the tree. So we're looking to reduce the parking waiver, at least from 2 to 0, but there will be parking along the ribbons, but it'll only be for front to back parking.
So is there a reason why you didn't reduce it from 2 to 1 then?
Well, that was I think the recommendation that we were looking at, it was with council, so I don't know if you can expound upon that. Okay.
Jonathan Scott, Transportation Planning. We're trying to help the applicant get his site plan in order. This is a unique site, since it's kind of tight. There was no room to put the parking in the back. So, technically, like, there's a driveway there, but the first space would have to be like an ADA space. And then you'd have a bunch of backup waivers and so forth. And we've had a couple things like this before. We thought the best thing would be just to waive it to 0 to grant that waiver, because otherwise you'd need all kinds of other backup waivers and dimensional waivers, and it was just kind of a little more cleaner. Now, that's what we're suggesting, but is that the way you were gonna proceed then, you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think that's the best way to kind of get around all the situational, dimensional issues we're having.
That's correct, yeah. We looked at options, and I think that's the way he's gonna go, so. That's what we were kind of suggested to him.
Great, thank you for the clarification. No further questions.
In regards to the ribbon drive that you're, I guess, replacing,
Yes.
can you explain how you get out of the car? Because it seems to
Yeah.
me like when you open the door, you'd be crossing the property line.
Yeah, it's pretty tight, but it conforms with compact parking spaces, like 8 by 16. So it's the same amount of width that you would have in a compact parking space. Doesn't appear to be that way, but
Do you own the property on the other side?
No.
So what if they put up a fence?
Well, you would, once you drive, there's only really a tight, like, bottleneck around where the house jets out in the middle of the ribbon.
So you're saying you wouldn't park on the ribbon?
Well, your wheels will be on the ribbon, but you would still have enough space to open up a door. You just wouldn't be able to open up, say, all the way out, right? But you would be able to pass right here beyond the condenser.
What's the dimension between
Yes,
your ribbon and the property line?
Right, it's 6 inches right now.
You can't open a car door and get
Yeah.
out in 6 inches.
But the wheel pads are located there, but your wheels for your car, they're 2 feet wide wheel pads. So,
Yeah, okay.
Car's wheels are
Kinda
like
see what you're
8 inches. So it's like you can,
Yeah.
you will have to kind of move it over a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
And this is where the ribbons were previous to?
They were actually, one of the ribbons was actually encroaching into the property line, but they had to demolish both ribbons to do the excavation for the, for their footers.
Yeah.
And then when the placement of the apron was installed through the city beautification program through the city, they located the apron. I'm trying to center,
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're trying
you know,
to do.
within the apron that was already was
I really
installed.
appreciate the bicycle rack in the back.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty big, you know.
I do.
Put 10 bikes right there, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't have any questions. The gentleman from transportation answered mine. You're up.
I guess my only concern is that, not so much for what the applicant is proposing, but what happens when he sells the property in the future. Because once we change the zoning, it's changed. It stays with the property, not with the owner. So, however, I don't really, it's a concern, but I don't know that the proposal is really, whatever happens to the house, if it's the future owner, he'd have to come back before us to do anything to the property. So that was my only concern.
Mr. Gross.
She was gonna say something. Just for my clarification on the waivers, can you point
Yes.
to the site plan where, I know the first one,
Yes.
but the others, where those are happening?
Yeah, it's just showing where the existing fence is and the existing location of the house in proximity to the property line. And the waivers are just allowing the house to pretty much technically stay where it is. So the reduction in buffers is just showing that there's an existing fence that's along, I have a picture. I thought I had a picture. Well, there's a fence, there's an existing wood fence along the eastern boundary. And then from that existing fence to the eastern facade, that's just a reduction in the waiver. It was just showing, you know, just that it would, with the YC9, this waiver would have to be requested to allow the house to be positioned where it is. And the same thing for the north boundary with the reduction of the buffer.
Okay, that was just a clarification. I think apart from that, great presentation, sir. Based on
Thank you.
what we've seen today, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not,
Mr. McCants, I have just a
Yeah,
quick
sure.
question. So the
Yeah.
adjacent property to your west,
Yes,
they're zone YC2
Yes.
as well, right?
Yes.
So they could go 0 lot line, so they built right up to that lot line.
yes, yeah.
But you'd still like to put a fence there, that's the fourth waiver, right? So you're gonna put a fence up against their,
Yeah, I was wanting to try to keep it open, you know, because of the proximity and the amount of space they took up on their parcel up to the edge of the property line.
okay?
But it's something that, you know, I can reconsider and not put the fence there, you know, just to allow more of a nice
I think
transition
it's
from one house to
I
the
think
other.
whatever you wanna do, that's fine, I
Okay.
don't think there's an issue with the waiver, you know,
Yeah.
obviously, I think it's really tight there.
Yeah,
But I just wanna see if they were 0 lot line, they built right up.
Yeah.
That CMU's right on that lot line.
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand the rezoning process here, because you're
Right.
YC2.
Yes.
Right, which is residential, so that
Yes.
would require parking,
Yes,
okay? But YC9 is site plan specific, so you could dictate that you don't need any parking in your site plan,
you know, I think,
right?
and originally when I spoke with the city about, before I purchased the property, that YC2, when I looked at the municipal code, it allows for office through approval of hearing, through YC2. But it was recommended to change it from YC2 to YC9, the site control,
Right.
just to maybe have more options as to, you
I
know,
think
maintaining existing
It
house.
does give you more options.
Yeah.
I'm not, like, with site plan specific, you can
Yeah.
have 0 parking, that's an
Yeah.
option. So,
Right.
I guess I don't know, and maybe, Mr. Adams could, or Kamari could comment on why
Mm-hmm.
we're having a parking reduction to 0 when the YC9 designation should handle that.
Okay.
You know, is it the ADA space requirement isn't necessarily waived through a YC9 designation?
Yeah, Jonathan Scott, Transportation
Mr.
Planning.
Scott.
That's correct. It's really you would have the ADA space, you'd have to meet the dimensional requirements, and you have the backup, which he wouldn't be, he would be backing out into the right of way, so you'd have a waiver for that. So there'd be a number of waivers otherwise.
Yeah, but a YC9 doesn't, you don't have to have any parking with a YC9.
Yeah, and he's
Site
gonna
plan.
be a PD rezoning in this case, so that's, he can ask for that waiver and other waivers as well.
Kamaria Pettis-Malco from the legal department. I guess what the board is asking is, what's the parking requirement for YC9 zoning designation?
Oh, gotcha, yeah. For the YC9, I think isn't it what you have there?
Well, yeah,
that
I thought it was two, because it was based on the square footage of the structure.
Yeah, it's two
Right.
spaces is required in this.
But if you're YC9, you dictate what that is. You're going through
So-
that rezoning, you can dictate whatever your parking is gonna be. I think that would be
Okay.
the whole purpose of making this go YC9 as compared to keeping it YC2 and asking for a waiver.
Right, okay.
But I don't know, maybe there's some other reasons that this is the recommended path here, but,
I think he's good.
and I'm just asking a question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that makes sense, yeah, if it's, because no YC2 was because of the sat down, I
I mean,
haven't.
if you stay YC2, then you
It was,
waiver.
Yeah, you're gonna
square
go,
footage, yeah,
you're going to
like
PD, so-
1,800 square feet, so we had it, that's why we need 2 parking spaces. But YC9, if there's no parking requirement,
but you have other waivers though, right?
yeah, but it was just the waivers for the reduction of the fencing because of
Because
the
you're
location of
PD
the house.
rezoning, not YC9 though, right?
Well, it's YC9, yeah,
You're zoning to PD though.
but YC9 is the PD within the YC
Oh, okay.
zoning, right?
Yeah.
Site plan control would be YC9, that would be a PD within YC9? Okay.
So I believe what the issue is that for the property to be in compliance with the parking requirements, it requires 2 parking spaces. Regardless of its parking, zoning classification, there needs to be parking on site. And so the minimum allowed would be 2, 1 ADA spot, 1 traditional spot. And so that waiver is memorializing the need to recognize that there's not going to be any parking dimensionally, technically satisfactory on the site. So it would be, you know, the same with a natural resources comment or a buffering comment.
Right, you know, and there is parking provided, but we're just not counting it, so it's a bonus, but I guess with site plan specific, you dictate how many parking spaces you're gonna have.
I mean, in the end, I think we're getting there just in a different way, but there's an acknowledgement that there's not gonna be an ADA space and a traditional parking space on the site plan.
Okay, just curious, and thank you all for addressing. Okay, Mr. McCants, we asked some questions of your presentation. You have a few moments to summarize your comments or rebut anything, and then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
No, I think I'm fine, yeah, I appreciate your time, yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. We can have some discussion on the case, starting with Mr. Nguyen.
No, I think just the rezoning seems is a little roundabout, but I have no problems with it. I think, and on behalf of the architects on this board, I mean, granted, you didn't have any building sections or anything, but thank you for having a nice.
Yeah,
drawing.
right, yeah, I was gonna say, they didn't have wall sections existing, but, yeah, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, no comment specific for the project, but I would like to take this opportunity just to say, I've been driving down Columbus Avenue a lot more recently, and it just compliments to people like you who've chosen to invest in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
The house you presented based on the pictures looks like it's being beautifully maintained.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also I want to compliment our staff. We don't do that enough, but I know it's been over probably a 20-year project. The staff's involvement with what's been going on along Columbus Avenue and how it spills out to the residential neighborhoods, but it's really just quite startling how impactful all the small decisions that have been made over the years have really added up to what really feels like a historic community, but especially a historic community in the 21st century. So that's just my, I've noticed that, and I've wanted to say
It is very beautiful,
publicly.
yeah.
So I know there's
Yes.
a lot of people involved, and it's why we're here as the volunteer board members, I think, and it's very encouraging to see that it's having impact.
Yes, thank you.
I think it's a great job. I like what you're doing, and I too agree. I like what appears to be the maintenance of the home, or the property, I should say. And I'm okay with this. I like that you're keeping the tree in the backyard and
Okay,
haven't
thank you.
impacted that.
Yes.
Because I think that adds a lot. You're up.
I don't have any more comments.
No comments. Good job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the compliments here of the board. So I know, Mr. McCann, you've always been highly invested in the communities that you work within, live, and everything. So kudos to you on that. And this is certainly a project that we can all support. And Columbus looks great. And it's really coming along. So
All right, thanks for your time.
we're going to go ahead and we'll entertain a motion for a recommendation to City Council for the rezoning.
Move to recommend City Council approve BLC 22-228 / REZ 22-111 for the property located at 1210 East Columbus Drive for the proposed rezoning from YC2 to YC9. Do I just mention the waivers?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. With conditions that, with the waivers from section 27-283.7 to reduce the required parking from 2 to 0, section 27.284.3.3 to reduce the required use use-to-use landscape buffer from 15 feet to 3 feet with a 6-foot tall fence to the north, section 27.384.3.3 to reduce the required use to landscape buffer from 15 feet to 1 foot with a 6-foot tall fence to the east, section 27.284.3.3 to reduce the required use to landscape buffer from 15 feet to 0 feet with a 6-foot tall fence to the west.
So we mentioned that the fencing to be wood.
Oh, and that the fencing to be wood. Yes, good call.
Second.
All in favor of proposed recommendation to City Council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice
Thanks,
job.
man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to do two little quick housekeeping things, if I may. In our packet, there's also staff approvals for minor projects, so those probably need to be entered into the record as being received. And okay, so in our packet is somebody can make the motion. It's,
I can't find it. We don't have it in our, only you have it.
oh, really?
It's just in the chair's packet, but that's,
Oh, okay.
the clerk has it as well.
Quickly, I'd like to make a motion to accept the staff approvals.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, said aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was just the presentations. I think today we saw two not so complete presentations, and one very well completed. It's getting more and more difficult to read a lot of these presentations, so I don't know if it's something that staff could work with the applicant a little bit more to get these presentations. I know there's certain standards that are set up in our design guidelines for what needs to be presented, but you know, I think the resolution on the monitors isn't great, and then we're looking at a distance, so it's kind of hard to see a lot of this information. So I don't know if it's something that we could try to work with the applicant to make their presentations more clear, because we're trying to glean this information, and it's just becoming more difficult.
Yeah, I see this as being sort of the aftermath of us transitioning from large format drawings during the pandemic, essentially, when we started to do digital presentations. And I'm still, I think there's different formatting that I'm starting to recognize, some of which we try to guide the applicants if they're going to do a digital presentation to just put 1 or 2 elevations on a particular slide, but you can see that is not always, getting done. So I think, what we need to do is to kind of explore the presentation process and see how that then links into our submission requirements. I think certainly one thing that I'm recognizing between this and the Architecture Review Commission is if they're gonna do, the applicants are gonna be presenting in like a PowerPoint type format, they need to have their black line drawings printed so that we can go to the ELMO. The ELMO seems to be, a vehicle by which we can zoom in and see the details a little bit better. So we'll continue to work on that. It's sometimes difficult because we're not exactly sure what the applicants may show up with on presentation day, and that's kind of what you saw today.
Yeah, and the PowerPoint's just, they put too much information on one sheet and you can't, the resolution just doesn't, it breaks down.
Yeah, understood.
Okay.
And, just also with the first presenter today,
Well, I think,
We're not
I
gonna talk
think-
cases.
yeah, there's a potential for the cases to come back before, this board, I don't know, I would just caution us talking about the cases, yeah, a particular case.
okay,
Generally, yeah.
speaking, just leaving a lot for us to figure out, like, no steps, no grade. I mean, that shouldn't even be presented if it went through the staff.
Shouldn't have come through.
I think, the window, the wall section, all those,
Well, we have very specific requirements of what we need, I mean, we even talked about that at the beginning, and even like, my other peeve is like, these guys have, the applicants have 30 minutes to present their case, and you blow through it in 5 minutes, and then we have to spend more time asking questions, which just gets us, it's like, they need to present everything all at once, we don't interrupt them, and that's their time. But it's like, we're starting to dig out basic information that should have been presented in the first place.
And our guidelines reflect exactly what they're supposed to be presenting.
Right.
So we should at least have that basic stuff in every presentation. If they don't have it, then they don't present. The guidelines say that this is what you gotta have.
So actually, there's a submission requirements for the process to file for an application, and it's fairly broad. It's site plan with certain scale and certain detailing. There's elevations, wall sections, and then architectural details. And how we expand upon that is through application meetings, the Historic Preservation HPDRC meeting, where we have an opportunity to work with the applicants. And then also through the staff report, because so the applicants are receiving the staff report about the same time that you do, about 10 days prior to the public hearing. So we're working with them, encouraging them to address the elements or provide additional information on the elements that is in the staff report. We don't have another opportunity from the time that the staff report goes out to the public hearing to review any drawings that they may want uploaded, because you've already received the drawings that they put into Excella. So there is a little bit of a period there where they're standing on their own feet to try to meet those requirements. We'll try to do more outreach with them. I can tell you we do a lot of outreach now. We will try to do more outreach with them to work on these issues, because I see it playing out particularly with this board for some reason, more so than the Architecture Review Commission. But it is something I think we can improve upon, and we'll certainly make an effort to do so.
Thank you.
I just want to ask or get your feedback, because part of my concern, I expressed it earlier, is that it seems like we're relying a lot on staff to truly finesse the details. How does that impact, your workload? Are we creating a situation for you that's sort of becoming untenable?
I mean, I think that when we're dealing with certain types of applications, like for instance, smaller additions or accessory structures perhaps, that I feel, that's an appropriate level to rely upon the staff to maybe a larger degree, because we've done so many of those types of applications, it becomes somewhat routine in what we're asking for. I think when you get into the realm of new construction, whether that be residential, multifamily, or commercial, I think that you have to have a more detailed application. number one, those applications, obviously there's more information, but also there's a longer time usually before they are heard at the public hearing and actually come in for building review. So there's more time for us to sort of forget the details if they're not articulated in the motion. But, you know, I've said this before, we've talked about this during workshops, it's essential when you're considering a motion to put in the detail into the motion itself. So I would much rather have a more detailed and a longer motion, particularly on certificates of appropriateness, because it helps the staff when we do go back. A CA is good for 5 years. So it helps us tremendously when we go back. And we do get applications that come in that 5th year, right up to the end. It's very difficult to retain that type of detail. So I feel that we can manage it to a degree that is sufficient, but I think the more detail, and I think if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel that an application doesn't have the information that you need to make a decision, then you should feel very confident that that should be conveyed in your motion or in the request to the applicant. And I have no problem with moving a case to another month and working with the applicant to get them to where they need to be or want to be able to do their project. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want is for the process to be beneficial to them and for the end product to be consistent with what the goals of the program are.
And are the just for my own edification, are the drawings eventually changed to reflect everything that we've put into our motion and once they've met with you? So when we say a railing, for instance, approved by staff, an actual drawing is created and included in the packet as part of the...
Correct. So what will happen post hearing, Lexus is going to create letters in the minutes, and those are going to be then provided to the applicant as, for instance, for conditional approval, that they have to provide whatever detailing, supplemental detailing that you're asking for us to be able to provide this certificate of appropriateness during permit review. Now, obviously, the drawings are going to become more detailed, and they're going to be expanded upon to comply with Florida Building Code, and so we have to sometimes get in there and modify, you know, maybe a detail to meet the building code, but they will have the conditions that you've requested, and we do have an inspector then, once the permit is issued, that goes out and ensures that that's done in the field. So, yeah, it does follow through. You're not just you know, articulating empty requirements. They're going to be applied and required.
Okay. You have a whole list of past cases. Well, check out the conditions. Like, I'm gonna go check.
Thank you for the clarification and the reassurance, because it has become almost the norm.
So is there like a example or like precedent set of drawings or something that can be given to potential applicants so they know have something to reference? Because it's easy for a board of architects to be like, oh, you know, these drawings don't meet our standards, but you know, for someone that's kind of coming in, you know, this is the one project they'll do in their lives and they submit, it might be a little more up in the air for them, right? They're not really sure what a wall section is supposed to entail, that type of thing.
Yeah, we have samples that we show. We
Yeah.
also encourage applicants to go on the city's website and look at a public hearing, particularly if they have a very detailed project to understand the process. And we coach them quite a bit, and you know, that has varying degrees of success, but we feel that, you know, a lot of the projects as they're evolving, when they come in the door, they're tremendously improved by the time they get there. They may meet the submission requirements, and then you have to just sort of manage the case, because not everyone is a great presenter, and there's a sort of an intimidation factor sometimes with appearing on TV and presenting your case. So, you know, we will work with them as much as they need. We're up to yesterday, I was contacting the applicants to see if they needed any additional assistance and reminding them of what exhibits to bring.
Good, thank you.
One of the things that I've noticed is that the well-presented plans, projects with all the information that they're supposed to submit, they're pretty easy to get through. There's not a lot of questions. But it's the poorly put together and poorly presented ones that we labor over. Is it possible to just say, look, you didn't submit all the documents that are required and be done with it and let them go back and try again?
We enforce the submission requirements at the staff level. Sometimes you'll see that come to you in the form of a continuation. But once they've met the submission requirements to the degree that's specified within the code, they have the ability to appear before the commission. And we do have a meeting the day before the public hearing with chair, staff, myself usually, and the chairperson. And we go through the applications and I kind of point out, some of the strengths and weaknesses of each application so that the chair is kind of tuned into that before they appear before you. But I think kind of understanding my goal is that for most projects, I think reasonably residential scale projects, that a homeowner or property owner should be able to present his project to the board without going out and hiring a professional to do so. I think a little patience is probably required on both sides.
Well, the other thing, do they understand we do not look at plans? I mean, we've had a lot of times, they spend half their time telling us about the floor plan, which is not something that we review.
I don't think that they're probably tied into the details as much as we are. I think that we have a approach in advising applicants to present the site plan, the elevations, the wall section, and the architectural details. I've said that probably hundreds of thousands of times in my career, just over and over and over again, multiple times. You can see that doesn't always happen. But that I've found over time has been a very good approach to covering most of the information that you're going to be needing, at least to get to the questions phase. So I don't believe everybody ties in with that. Our applicants throughout our entire program that probably appear before the boards on a regular basis probably understand that more through the learning curve. But I think certainly you do need a level of information that you can make a decision that you feel comfortable with or that is appropriately delegated to staff. If you're not in that situation, then I think there's a need to kind of reevaluate that particular application and give them another opportunity to come back at a subsequent hearing.
Right, thank you for giving that
Sure.
additional dialogue on that. And we have one more item on our agenda, item 8, election of officers. We have a full house tonight, so I think we should probably try to get
Let's
this
get
done.
it done.
Well,
So with that, I'll go ahead and kind of lead the conversation. So once a year in your rules of procedure states that you will have an election of officers for both the chair and vice chair position. Obviously, currently, your chairperson is Mr. Simmons. He serves in that capacity. And Mr. Nugent serves in the vice chair capacity. So we open it up to nominations. I typically start with the vice chair position. Once I receive the nomination, I'll ask the individual if they are willing to serve in that capacity for the next, well, it's less than a year now, but for the next, till the next election. And we can have multiple nominations and then we'll take votes accordingly. I do want to point out that your existing officers can be reelected if you so choose to, or you can nominate new individuals for those positions. So if it's the pleasure of the board, I'll go ahead and open nominations for the vice chairperson position. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Shalas.
Oh.
And is Mr. Jalotz willing to serve in that capacity?
Actually, I've served on many boards, and I've had this conversation with Dennis, is that I actually prefer not to have the official role of chair or vice chair, because I feel that allows me to concentrate more on the projects before us and speak more freely. So I would politely decline.
Well, thank you for that. Do we have any other nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Nugent if he chooses to continue.
I accept.
We have a nomination. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, if I could just have a vote for the nomination of Mr. Nugent for vice chair.
Aye.
Those are, Aye.
By
Any opposed? Okay, sorry?
Was there a motion?
No.
I nominated him.
That was seconded.
Okay, and then moving on to the position of chairperson. Any nominations for the position of chairperson?
I would like to nominate Rich, if you would so choose to do it again. I think he's done a great job and does a great job and is spearheading us all.
Second? Oh, second.
Does Mr. Simmons accept that nomination?
I'll accept the nomination.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, will those that are approving that nomination please signify by raising your hand? Okay. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We'll have that reflected in the record for today.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Are we
Seeing no
done?
more business in front of the board, we are adjourned.
Damn, we're done. Here you go.